everyone. Welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with return guest and gym franchise master, PJ Glassey from xgym.com. And PJ is an exercise scientist. He's a physiologist. He's a researcher. He is a biohacker. He is a brain science specialist. And he has an important question for you today, and that is, what type is your brain? He has this brain type test, which helps exactly like you watching and or listening right now, determine which of the 16 brain types you are. And then based on that, you can determine which shortcuts and hacks you can apply to unlock your unique superpowers for faster health and fitness results with little to no willpower. That sounds amazing. PJ, glad to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you too.
Yeah. And so, what comes to mind with this whole like brain test thing is, with the like gym, going to the gym and exercising and all that stuff, people always think about like the physical results. And I haven't been to a gym in a while. I'm like more of like a walk outside, run type of person. But back when I would go to a gym habitually, I did it for the mental benefits of that. I figured I don't really want to be like super lean or super buff, but it was good for me to get the day started right and to get the blood pumping, get everything moving. And it would give me all these crazy, weird insights. And it felt like it would like unlock my brain just moving around and using the exercise equipment, using the treadmill, the elliptical. And that's what comes to mind with this whole like biohacking brain arena that you have found yourself in, that like, by exercising, being healthy, there's the body benefits, but there's the mind brain benefits as well.
Huge brain benefits. And most people don't even begin to tap into the potential of that with exercise. So ranging from just going for a walk and instead of a meeting in the office, or even if you're on the phone having a meeting, go for a walk. And if you can have the other person on the other side do the same thing, both of you are going to be more creative and you're going to cooperate better. You're going to be more open-minded to more possibilities. Lots of things happen just when you're moving. So then when you take that to an exponential level where you're doing exercise, and especially the right kind of exercise, then your brain just basically just goes on overcharge, and it's just a wonderful thing, and it's so good for the brain. It's healthy for the brain, but it also puts you in the right kind of state, that same overcharge state, which is a good thing with the body, because the human body is meant to be efficient and it wants to expend the least amount of energy. But then when you give it something like exercise or this brain type test with all the hacks in it, then you're just really unlocking your superpowers. And I can see with your shirt, you're Batman. And so other people can be their own superhero because of the secrets that they have inside that they just need to unlock, but they just need to find the keys to do that. And the brain type test is one of those keys.
And I almost feel like we should have both been walking while doing the interview, so that way we could be on brand on message here, right? In alignment with what you're talking about, of if you can be on the phone, be walking, if you can have the other person be walking. And I think at some point I heard about, I don't know if it was Bill Gates or Steve Jobs maybe, would meet people and go for a walk in nature because the other person would be more agreeable, like you're talking about, with the kind of like the body's moving and you're in forward motion and all of those types of benefits. And so I definitely am drinking the metaphorical Kool-Aid here, as far as move around and don't just be stuck in the dark office all day. And before this I took a walk. After this I'm going to take a walk. There's so many times when I'm not browse Facebook when I'm walking, because I feel like that defeats the purpose, but I will bust out like a Google document and I'll type out a sentence or two of like some really good idea, or be working on a book while I'm walking, just because I feel like my brain is freer. I can't really explain it, but like you're talking about how there's like it's the same brain, it's the same everything, but it just feels more like unlocked, less limited. And so there's this brain type test, 16 brain types. And is there an easy way to explain this without listing all 16 and spending 16 minutes on it? Or like, how do we figure out like the big picture of these 16 brain types?
Yes, the big picture is each of us has our own unique brain wiring. And so we have a brain type. Some of us, most of us actually, have a primary and a secondary. So a few people just have one brain type, and just it depends on how they answer the questions on the test. But the majority have a primary and a secondary, and when they have two brain types, that just means they're typically one way at work and another way at home. And the people that have one brain type are just the same both ways. My wife just has one brain type. I have two brain types, primary, secondary. But the primary one is the one that's going to make the most sense to your brain. And then the secondary gives you extra tips and tricks. So when you put them both together, it's really powerful. And the thing that got it started was I and other trainers in the past, especially other trainers still, but me in the past, I was giving advice to my members and other people on health and fitness based on what I learned works best for me. Other trainers still do that because they just assume that that's the best way. And that's why so many people have so many different opinions. And then they will tell, and like I used to tell people to, here's what you do and here's what you eat and here's how you do it and now go do it. And then they'd come back after a week or two and they'd say, oh, it started out great, but then I don't know what happened. It just all fell apart. And then, so as trainers, we would assume, well, they just, don't have as much willpower. And so let's just work on that willpower thing. Or we'd say stuff like, well, you got to want it. How bad do you want it? And all this kind of trying to motivate them and these phrases and things that we'd use, and it still wouldn't work. And so then when trainers are telling people what works for them, it's probably about an 84% chance it's actually not going to work for that person, because the most common brain type is only 16% of the population. And then the least common of the 16 brain types is 2% of the population. And so what the brain type test does is it figures out what type the person is, and it gives them traits, hacks, shortcuts, workout style, and brain training techniques to rewire their brain for faster results and less struggles with less need for willpower, because it's speaking to their brain wiring instead of my brain wiring or another trainer's brain wiring or the brain wiring of somebody that you might see on Instagram that got great results. Well, the reason that it doesn't work for everybody, one thing doesn't work for everybody, is because we all have different brains. And that's really what it comes down to: results, is the wiring of our brain, and whether our brain is going to help us get those results or it's going to work against us.
And so, and that's a lot to think about, just as far as I think about the times when, like, if I knew someone, if I had a mentor or a trainer, like in like even a business sense, who like gave good advice, but it just it felt like it almost worked, but not quite. And there's been many times when I felt like I was almost like impersonating or like being an actor and in character as like this mentor, and it felt really weird. It felt like I wasn't being like spoken to in my sort of language. And that makes a lot of sense, how instead of just trying to get everyone to think your way, which like you said, there's this low percentage of that actually succeeding long term, meet them where they're at, figure out how they think, figure out what that primary and that secondary is. And so is there like a hierarchy? Because sometimes with these sorts of, like there's like the personality test or things like that, right? Where there's like the 4 letters, and they'll say like, well, first you're one of these 4. And then within that, you're one of these 4. Is there like any kind of hierarchy, or are they like 16 wildly different buckets?
They're very wildly different buckets. And 2/3 of them, or probably 3/4 of them, are like the general population, were extroverted kind of brain types. And then the remaining quarter of them are more introverted kind of brain types. But they vary widely between introverted brain types and extroverted brain types, because some are more right brain and some are more left brain within those subgroups. And so it really dials it in and helps people understand their own brain type, and helps them find the things that are going to work better for them. So somebody comes to my gym and they say, hey, I want to do this or that, and I want to get in shape this way or that way, but I've just never been motivated with this or that. And so I'll find out their brain type, and then I'll say, well, I know that you came to this gym wanting one-on-one training, but actually your brain type is going to do a lot better with our group training. And so I'll put them in that because of what I've learned about their brain type. And some people will say, hey, I want to do the keto diet. And so I'll say, well, okay, but let's figure out if that's even going to work for you so you can avoid some frustration if possible, because that works for a very small percentage of the population, because you have to have a certain brain wiring, because the keto diet is 100% commitment. Because if you're only 99 or 98% committed to the keto diet, it can be fattening. You can get heavier because you're kind of in. Whereas if you're 85% committed to the Mediterranean diet, you can still get results. And so if someone is all in 100% on keto, they will get great results. But this is why some people don't. And they think they're 100%, but they're not, because they have that, occasional cheat, and because their brain type is sabotaging. And so I rarely recommend the keto, even though it's this big, huge fad thing. And even though I do it myself, I rarely recommend it, because it's only applicable and it will work for a certain kind of brain type that's the vast minority of people out there.
And this is really interesting to think about. Like, you're making me think about, like, say I'm looking to solve a problem in general, right? Like, I mean, you're Mr. Gym Fitness guy, and the problem you solved is, how do I, like, lose weight, be healthy? And is it more of like an exercise or a diet thing, or like you said, like an individual or a group? And many times when I'm trying to solve a problem, I'll like go on YouTube and I'll search for how to solve this, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, 4 out of 5 of these results, if not more, I just are not applicable to me. And then you
Yeah.
hear about all these things like, like tagging and like filtering your list and like doing all these things on like funneling, so that way based on like these different variety types of people, you kind of market to them, or you attack the problem in different sorts of ways. And so this is really interesting, as far as
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this kind of applies to like any kind of learning in general, right? Instead of trying to
Yeah.
just go with a straightforward method and then failing because you're basically like rolling the dice as far as if this will work for you, instead of feeling like you're dumb or like you can't do it, it's like, take the test, figure out the way to attack the problem, and then go about it that way. And so, to kind of give us an idea about these brain types, can you tell us what brain type you are and kind of what that means for you specifically?
Yeah, I'm the inventor, and that's a very small percentage of the population. And then my secondary is the scientist, and neither of them really surprised me at all, when that came back. Of course, they weren't named that, because I gave them those names later as I was developing the process. But those are very, believe it or not, extremely introverted brain types. So, and I am an extreme introvert. I do a good impersonation of an extrovert, but it's exhausting. And so, and I'm in, the people industry, and I'm a trainer and all that. So I'm around people all the time. So I've adapted, and but those are my two. And so for me, there's certain strategies to do that work really well for me. But for the opposite, like my wife, for instance, and can I do a screen share?
Uh,
Would
I
that
think
work?
so. Are you, if I make you a co-host, I think you can.
Let me see here. Let's see if
Does
this will
this,
work.
there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So my
So this,
wife's brain type. So she's kind of the opposite of me. And this is one of the bigger, more popular, 12% of the population has this one. And so this is what her report looks like. So, she's very extroverted, and Barbara Walters is this brain type. And then she's also, connoisseur, heightened senses for taste and smell and texture, which is really good indicators and hints towards how she should be eating. That's Andrew Carnegie. Is this type. So it shows people that are this type as well. She's a connector, just the consummate networker. Uh, Sam Walton for Walmart is Dynasty Builder, which is totally her description. And then it talks about shortcuts and tips. So she's a people person and focusing, she can focus really well on health and fitness. Here's Shania Twain. Best workout would be group classes for her because she's such a people person. Her top 2 hacks, supporting others and finding support from others. And then down here is the page 3 is the magic. So this is the brain training techniques. I've developed about 30 of these, but this is her 6 best based on her brain type. So she doesn't have to try all 30 or start throwing things up against a wall. She gets it dialed down right away. The hunger scale technique, the conscious eating technique, the EFT, which is the tapping technique using acupressure kind of technology, the stories technique, the last 90 minutes technique, and the habit busters technique. So, and her brain type and her techniques is going to be a lot different than mine. And these are going to be really powerful for her because when she starts doing these, then she is literally rewiring her brain. And so she gets results faster and less need of willpower. And so it's not a struggle. It's easier and faster. And then the last page, of course, is just, it's the so now what page, and then how to apply it. And there's, other things and blogs and posts and things to help people. So it's not just a personality test like the Myers-Briggs where you take it and you go, oh yeah, that's totally me. Oh, that was really fun. This one actually gives you action items and how to implement it and what to do.
This is interesting. And I mean, you mentioned Myers-Briggs, and I think I took a test like that once, and it said I was this type, and I took it again. I said I was a different type. And then I waited a couple more years and said I was even a third type. And I thought, like, it doesn't seem like very accurate. But what's interesting about this and your kind of analysis here is I like how there were the characters, right? How there was there's Warren Buffett here, or there was Danny Glover here, because sometimes you hear about that whole idea of like find this famous person's biography, right? They say things like, read Sam Walton's biography, or like find a documentary about Walt Disney. And you hear about that, and I think, man, there's not enough time in the world to like read everyone's biographies or like watch everyone's documentaries.
Right.
But I know that there are like certain people who like I should be getting their voice in my head. So this is interesting where you can kind of have this collection of like, I guess, celebrities that are like you who have succeeded. And then this way you can kind of see what they have going on, or read about their history, or figure out like if they have like interesting like quotes or things they have said or done. And that way we're not just shotgunning this whole wide just mess of things to be looking into. We can tap into, okay, this person is like me, and there's a similar path I can be on to get to success, whatever that looks like. And this is really amazing. That's my favorite part of what you've shown me here is the archetypes, the people that we can then further research, like go down the rabbit hole of what Barbara Walters has said or done or been known for, instead of just saying, well, you're 35% audio kinesthetic. When I say that's nice, but I don't know what that means. So this is way more helpful.
Yeah. So if she were to find out, how to succeed, she would read biographies on Barbara Walters and Andrew Carnegie and Sam Walton and kind of follow their plan and their blueprint. But it's also, I've heard that from other people that use it for that purpose, but also I've heard where people will have better relationships with their significant other, their spouse. And a good example of that is me, because one day we had these really yummy drinks that we'd bought at a discount store. And so they're sitting on the counter, and we divided them in half. And so Bev had just slammed hers down, within a week, and she just ran out her half. And I was just a little bit slower with it because I'm not, my senses for smell and taste are not as heightened as hers are and sensitive. So she said, oh gosh, do you think I could maybe have one of those? And then I remembered her brain type test, that she's all about taste and smell, and me not so much. And so I was able to say, actually, why don't you just take them all? Because it really doesn't make that much difference to me of what I'm eating and drinking, but I know it does to you. Instead of me being territorial about my half and sharing or being resistant to that idea. And so it has a lot of crossover effects outside of just health and fitness and nutrition.
Yeah, and I mean, you're making me think of, I mean, our lives are full of misunderstandings, right?
Yeah.
Miscommunications
Mm-hmm.
of saying things like, well, I want to be firm about this, but then you end up
Mm-hmm.
being a jerk. Or you say, well, I want to be clear about this other thing, like you said, like the yummy drinks, but then sometimes you might be thinking, well, maybe this person will think that, or I don't want them to get the wrong impression of this, and you end up driving yourself crazy. And then because
Mm-hmm.
everything is through your own lens and your own personality type, then it's almost
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed to be wrong. And so it's like this seems like a way to get a better handle on just so many different things, right? You talked about
Yeah.
exercising, dieting,
Mm-hmm.
motivation, business, personal relationships. I mean, it seems like we
Mm-hmm.
all need to be tapping into this and get and taking the test so that way we can get real answers, real results, not just this weird scientific nerdy stuff where it's almost like taking a BuzzFeed quiz where it's, well, what type of flower are you? Okay, I got the answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. Now this is something that is more useful. And so now that people know about this and they're excited about it, like what's the next step here? Where do people find out more about this brain test? How do we take the brain test? What's the next step?
Yeah, so they can go to the brain type test page, and it explains all about it, and it gives videos and stuff on it. And that's just vip.xgym.com/brain type test. And of course they could email me and ask, if they forget it. And my email is easy, pj@xgym.com. And then that page will explain all the details, so they can learn all about it on that page.
Fantastic. So just to make sure I have this right, vip.xgym.com/brain type test.
Yep,
Fantastic. And
that's
so
the address. Mm-hmm.
cool. So you go there, you click on show me my brain type, you fill in the information, and then everyone watching and listening will be on their way to figuring out where the heck you are, what the heck you need to do. And so once we have our answer to what type of brain type we are, we already talked about how now you know kind of what to do as far as like exercise and like motivation and like role models and
Mm-hmm.
communication. I mean, like, is there anything we left out here? Once someone knows their brain type, what happens next?
Then they have all the tools on their report that they get back, which is what I showed you on the screen. This is an example of that. So it's a big PDF infographic report that shows them their tips and tricks and hacks and what to do with it. And then, of course, they also have lifetime access to that page because it brings them to the page for the report, which can change. Because as I continue to refine this, it can improve and dial it in even tighter. And then they also everybody gets free retests once a year, because your brain type can change, especially when you're doing these brain rewiring techniques that I've developed. The brain is very plastic and it can change. And as it changes, maybe you do become a different brain type. You're probably not going to go from an extrovert to an introvert or from a right brain to a left brain, but there's 4 or 5 different brain types that are similar enough that you might bounce around between them. And then if you do test later to a different brain type, it's probably going to be just a little bit shift sideways. And a lot of your brain training techniques on that third page are going to be similar, but some of the traits might change a little bit, and some of the hacks and tips and tricks might change a little bit. And certainly you will get some new brain training techniques. But it's interesting to see an opposite the different brain training techniques that they have. Because my daughter is also opposite of mine. And when she first took the test, she read the results and the suggestions, and she goes, "Oh, it's just, I don't know. These seem so general. It could probably apply to anybody." And so then I sent her my report on my suggestions, tips, tricks, and brain training, and it was completely different because I'm opposite. And she goes, "Oh, yeah, those would not make sense to me at all." So it really is unique to each person's brain type and brain wiring.
And that relates back to what you were mentioning earlier about how, whether we like it or not, we all have that assumption. We think everyone behaves and acts and thinks the way we do, whereas it's
Yeah.
completely opposite. And that's where, again, we have those misunderstandings where someone does
Yep.
something and like it really doesn't make sense. Like, why is
Mm-hmm.
someone motivated by that? Or why
Mm-hmm.
would they be doing that thing? Because wouldn't their goal be this? And so yeah, that's interesting how kind of like how you don't really notice like light or air or
Mm-hmm.
what's around you because it's always there. But then if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there, then you sure as heck would notice if there was like no sky outside, right? Not even blackness,
Right.
but just like nothing there. You'd be like, okay, like I took it for granted because it was always there, but because I got
Yeah.
that different perspective, then I'm like, okay, so it really is for me. And it's like you I get frustrated sometimes when I look for advice and especially like like motivational or like like brain
Mm-hmm.
type of advice, and sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
feels like they're just like spinning a wheel, right? When there's
Mm-hmm.
advice like, oh well, just do this 10 minutes a day, or just pick up this new habit, or just schedule time for that. And it sometimes
Mm-hmm.
gets frustrating because you think they really might be just choosing this different pieces of advice at random. So this is great because now we can take the test, figure out who we are, know what is the exact right fit for us. And then, like you said, when we
Mm-hmm.
evolve over time and our brain, our test results change slightly, then we can then adjust from there. Because I mean, I think we were all a way different person than in high school versus in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the way we think now is completely
Mm-hmm.
different from way back then. So everyone needs this.
Yep.
We need to go to vip.xgym.com/brain test. Did I remember that right?
Brain type test.
Brain type test. All right.
Mm-hmm.
vip.xgym.com/brain type test. And as we close this down, do you have any final words of advice for us, PJ? Anything you think maybe we left out or you'd really like to leave people with just one final thought here?
Yeah, I would, because what a lot of people, especially the people who think that they've failed over and over trying to achieve the health and fitness, they feel like there's just nothing left. And well, I've tried, they feel like, gosh, I've tried everything. And so, what else is there? And it's not that you're a failure at all. It's just that your wiring doesn't like what you've tried so far. There's going to be stuff out there that is going to work great for you. You just got to find it and keep trying. Be your own biohacker. This brain type test can help, but never give up, because there's always an answer and no one is hopeless. Everybody can get all the results they want. They just have to unlock how to do that.